the story doesn't begin with love. It begins with betrayal. Imagine this. The man you trusted more than anyone, the man you built a home with, suddenly looks at you one evening with cold, distant eyes. His words cut deeper than any knife. I don't love you anymore. I want your sister. Your heart stops. At first, you think you misheard him. How could he say that? Your own sister. The same sister who grew up with you, who you shared your clothes with, who you defended at school, who you called your best friend. But no, he isn't joking. He isn't confused. He's serious. Dead serious. He doesn't even hide his arrogance. She's better than you. She makes me happy. You're nothing compared to her. In that moment, the world doesn't just break. It shatters. You look at your sister, hoping she'll say something, anything, that she'll laugh and say, no, this is crazy, I'd never do this to you. But instead, she lowers her head and the silence says everything. The whispers spread like fire in the family. Neighbors talk. Relatives gossip. Some blame him, some blame her, but most blame you. They whisper, if he left her, maybe she wasn't good enough as a wife. It's humiliation piled on top of heartbreak, and he doesn't even flinch. He signs the divorce papers with the same hand he once used to hold yours, and he walks away, hand in hand with your own sister. That night, you sit alone in an empty house. The photos on the wall stare back at you. Wedding pictures, birthdays, vacations, memories that now feel poisoned. And deep down, you promise yourself one day, he'll regret this. But here's the twist no one saw coming. 4 years later, fate brought him face to face with the very woman he discarded like yesterday's news. He thought she was broken, defeated, forgotten. But when he saw her again, something made his chest tighten, his breath catch, because behind her stood a child with eyes that looked just like his. 4 years passed. Time moved forward, but the wounds never truly healed. For her, every day was a quiet battle. Waking up alone, raising her child, and facing a world that had already judged her. Society wasn't kind. Relatives whispered behind her back. Neighbors pitied her. And whenever she crossed paths with her sister, the pain dug a little deeper, but she survived. Her home wasn't grand, but it was filled with warmth. Small toys scattered across the living room, a tiny pair of shoes near the door, a refrigerator covered in crayon drawings. The laughter of a child echoed in every corner, a laughter that reminded her she wasn't broken. She wasn't alone. That child was her strength. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. The sun was sharp but gentle, painting golden streaks across the busy street. She had taken her child out for ice cream, holding his small hand in hers. The city buzzed around them, car horns, vendors calling out, people rushing by. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace. But peace has a cruel way of breaking. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a figure. A familiar figure? Her heart skipped. It couldn't be. There he was, her ex-husband. The man who once promised her forever. He looked older, but not wiser. His sharp suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. His confident stride seemed forced, as if life hadn't been as sweet as he expected. And beside him, her sister. Her once beloved sister. The same one who stole not only her husband but also her dignity, now walked with him. But something was different. The glow she once carried was gone. Her smile seemed forced, her steps heavy. Even from a distance, you could tell the happily ever after wasn't so happy after all. The world suddenly felt too small. Out of all the places, all the moments, fate had chosen this one to bring them face to face again. She froze for a second. Memories crashed over her. The betrayal, the humiliation, the nights of crying alone. But then she felt a tiny tug on her hand. "Mom," her child whispered, eyes wide and innocent. "Can I have chocolate instead of vanilla?" That small voice pulled her back into the present. She looked down at her son, his eyes sparkling with joy, completely unaware of the storm about to unfold. And in that moment, she realized something powerful. She wasn't the same broken woman they left behind. She was stronger. She stood tall. Her child by her side and walked forward. The crowd around seemed to slow down. Conversations blurred into murmurs, footsteps faded. All that remained was the inevitable confrontation, and then it happened. Her ex-husband's eyes met hers. At first, he didn't recognize her. She was different now. Her posture was firm, her aura calm yet powerful. But when his gaze dropped and saw the small figure holding her hand, His entire world stopped. The ice cream in his hand nearly slipped. His confident expression shattered. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. For a man who once carried arrogance like a crown, this silence was louder than any insult. Her sister noticed too. She glanced at the child, then quickly back at her husband. Guilt flickered across her face, though she tried to hide it. The air grew thick. People walking by noticed the strange tension, slowing down to glance at the scene. A few whispered. Some even stopped, sensing a drama about to unfold. And there she stood, calm, unshaken, with her child clutching her hand. It was no longer a story of betrayal. It was a story of survival, strength, and quiet revenge, and this was only the beginning. The silence between them didn't last long. It never does when arrogance is louder than truth. Her ex-husband's lips curled into a smirk, that same smirk she remembered from the day he walked out. He looked her up and down as if measuring her worth in the middle of a crowded street. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look who we have here. My ex-wife." The words felt like daggers, not because they hurt her, but because he said them loudly, loud enough for people around to hear. A few strangers turned their heads, pretending not to listen, but clearly curious. And then he added the poison. "Still the same, aren't you? Ordinary, alone. I see nothing has changed." His sister-wife, her own sister, let out a short laugh, though it sounded more nervous than genuine. She clung to his arm, tilting her chin upward as if to show off her prize. "I told you she wouldn't move on," she whispered, just loud enough for the wife to hear. "She never could." The crowd's whispers grew louder. Strangers judged with their eyes. Some smirked, others shook their heads. But she stood still, calm, silent. Her ex-husband stepped closer, lowering his voice but sharpening the cruelty. "Do you regret it? Losing me?" His words carried arrogance, as if he believed he was still the center of her world. "Because trust me, I don't regret leaving you. Best decision I ever made." He straightened his suit jacket, flashing the expensive watch on his wrist. "Look at me, successful, respected, and look at you." His gaze slid down to the child clinging to her hand. For the briefest second, his face faltered, but he quickly masked it with disdain. "Dragging around some kid. What a pity." Her sister's eyes followed the child too, and for just a moment guilt flashed across her face. But pride smothered it quickly. She tightened her grip on her husband's arm. "She always wanted children," she said coldly. "But maybe some people just aren't meant for that kind of happiness." The wife's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something sharper. Because little did they know, the truth standing beside her would soon tear down every wall of arrogance they had built. But she didn't reveal it. Not yet. Instead, she let the silence speak for her, and that silence made them restless. Her ex-husband's voice grew louder, his arrogance desperate for validation. "Tell me, do you ever regret not being enough? I mean, look at my life and look at yours. I upgraded. You stayed stuck." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some gasped. Some shook their heads in disapproval. But no one spoke. The street had become a stage, and every stranger was now part of the audience. Her sister leaned in, her tone dripping with triumph. "Don't feel too bad. He was never really yours. Maybe he was always meant for me." That line struck harder than any insult. A betrayal not just of marriage, but of blood. Her own sister standing proudly beside the man who ruined her life. And yet, she didn't break. Not this time. Instead, she looked at them, calmly, silently, with eyes that no longer carried tears but fire. The child tugged at her hand again, sensing the tension, but not understanding the storm. She bent slightly, whispered something in his ear, and he nodded, holding her hand tighter. Her ex-husband scoffed, mistaking her calm for weakness. "You see? Still quiet. Still powerless. You'll never change." But in reality, it wasn't weakness. It was patience because the storm wasn't over. It was just about to begin. The crowd waited for her to break. Everyone expected tears, shouting, maybe even a fight. After all, how many women could stand face to face with the man who betrayed them, standing proudly beside the sister who stole him, and not collapse? But she didn't. Not a single tear. Her eyes stayed steady, calm like the surface of deep water, hiding a storm that no one else could see. Her ex-husband shifted uncomfortably. He was used to control. used to being the one who made others tremble. Yet here she was, standing tall, refusing to give him the satisfaction. "Why are you so quiet?" he sneered, raising his voice louder for the onlookers. "Is this all you've got?" Silence. But his words bounced off her like pebbles against stone. Finally, she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It was calm. Almost too calm. "You talk too much," she said softly. The words were simple, but they cut deeper than any insult. The crowd murmured. Some chuckled under their breath. Even the sister's smile faltered for a second. Her ex-husband narrowed his eyes, trying to recover. "Don't try to be clever. You're nothing without me." "Nothing." She tilted her head slightly, her gaze never leaving his. "If I'm nothing, why are you still trying so hard to prove it?" That line hit him harder than a slap. For the first time, his jaw tightened. The sister squeezed his arm, whispering something, but the wife raised her hand gently, silencing the moment. "No, let him speak," she said calmly. "Let him tell the world how proud he is of betraying his wife for her sister." "I'm listening." Her composure unsettled them both. The crowd leaned closer, their curiosity growing. What kind of woman speaks this way after being so humiliated? What kind of strength does it take to stay this calm? Her ex-husband forced a laugh. "You think people care about you? No one does. Look around. You're alone." She shook her head slowly, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "No, I'm not alone." Her hand gently rested on the child's shoulder. The boy looked up at her, his big eyes full of trust, unaware of the firestorm unfolding around him. That smile, not of weakness, but of quiet strength, was enough to unsettle everyone watching. She took a small step forward, her voice steady, her tone almost like a whisper yet loud enough for all to hear. "The difference between us is simple. You need to shout for people to notice you. I don't." The crowd reacted instantly. A few claps, a few gasps, and whispers spreading like wildfire. Her sister frowned, her confidence slipping. "She's just trying to sound wise. Don't listen to her." But the damage was already done. The calmness of the betrayed woman carried more power than all of their arrogance combined. Her ex-husband clenched his fists. For the first time, his words faltered. He wanted her to scream, to collapse, to beg, anything that would prove he had won. But her silence, her steady gaze, her composed words, it was worse than any revenge, because it showed she no longer feared him. The child tugged at her hand again, and this time she leaned down, whispering softly, "Don't worry. Some truths reveal themselves when the time is right." Then she straightened, facing her ex-husband once more. Her final words in that moment were quiet, but they struck with the weight of thunder. "You left me for her. That's your story, but mine is only beginning." The crowd erupted in murmurs again, sensing something bigger was hidden beneath her calmness. Something yet to be revealed, and that mystery was exactly what shook them more than anything else. The air grew heavy. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Everyone was waiting for the next move, for her to finally snap, for him to say something crueler, for the sister to tighten her claws. But instead, the unexpected happened. The child, who had been quietly hiding behind her, stepped forward. His small hand clung to her dress as he looked up at the man before him. Big, innocent eyes stared at the arrogant face that had once destroyed his mother's life. For the first time, the ex-husband's smirk faltered. Something about those eyes. They were hauntingly familiar. The wife noticed it. She spoke gently, almost like a teacher addressing a careless student. "Look closely," she said, her tone steady. "Don't they remind you of someone?" The crowd tilted their heads, watching with curiosity. Some gasped quietly. Her ex-husband frowned, shaking his head as if trying to dismiss the thought. "Don't play games with me," he snapped. But his voice lacked the same strength as before. His eyes kept darting back to the boy. The child tilted his head, confused but calm. And when the light hit his face just right, there was no denying it. The sharp jawline, the same nose, and most of all, those unmistakable eyes. The crowd began to murmur louder. "They look alike. Could it be? My God, he looks just like him." Her sister's grip on his arm loosened. Her face went pale. Finally, the wife broke the silence. "This is your son!" The word struck like thunder. Her ex-husband froze. His lips parted, but no words came out. He stared at the boy as if the ground beneath him had just collapsed. His arrogance vanished, replaced by shock. The wife continued, her voice calm but heavy with truth. When you left me, when you humiliated me, I was already carrying your child. You threw away not just a wife, but your own blood. The crowd gasped, louder this time. The whispers turned into outrage. Strangers who had once judged her were now glaring at him with disgust. Her ex-husband staggered back a step. His eyes darted between her and the boy. No, that's not... You're lying. The wife shook her head, her gaze unshaken. Lies tremble. Truth stands tall. Look at him. Do you really think anyone here can't see it? The child blinked innocently, still holding on to his mother's hand. And in that innocence, the entire truth screamed louder than any words. The sister's face twisted, panic spreading across her features. She hissed at her husband, "Say something!" Deny it. But he couldn't, he knew. Deep down, he knew, and the crowd knew too. People began shaking their heads, their voices harsh with judgment. How could he abandon his wife like that? And for her own sister? Shameful! A man like this doesn't deserve respect. Her ex-husband's pride crumbled before everyone's eyes. For years, he had lived thinking he had upgraded, that he had won. But now, standing in the middle of strangers who judged him like a jury, he realized he had lost everything. The wife stepped forward, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. You called me nothing. You laughed at me. But look at me now. I stand with my head high with the only thing that truly matters. My child. What do you have? A hollow marriage built on betrayal. The sister flinched at her words. The arrogance that once shone in her eyes dimmed into shame. The ex-husband finally tried to speak, his voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me? Why hide this from me? Her answer was simple. Because you didn't deserve to know. The crowd erupted in applause and approving murmurs. For the first time, the power had shifted completely. She was no longer the betrayed wife. She was the woman who survived, who carried herself with dignity, who revealed the truth at the perfect moment. And he was nothing more than a man stripped of his pride, left bare before the world. The silence after the revelation lasted only seconds. And then it broke. The crowd erupted, voices colliding like waves in a storm. People who had been quiet spectators only moments ago now became the jury, and their judgment was harsh. How disgusting. One man spat, glaring at the ex-husband. He betrayed his wife and his family. A woman shook her head. For what? For her sister? Another whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. He left his own blood behind. What kind of father does that? The whispers grew into a chorus of disapproval, their voices like daggers piercing the ex-husband's pride. His shoulders hunched. The confident posture that once screamed arrogance now bent under invisible weight. For years, he had lived believing he had won, that leaving her for her sister made him clever, powerful, untouchable. But now, with strangers condemning him from every corner, he realized the truth. He wasn't admired. He was despised. His sister-wife stood frozen. Her hand slipped off his arm as though it burned her skin. Her face, once painted with arrogance, now paled with shame. The judgment of strangers cut her too, and it cut deeper than she imagined. Shameless woman, someone hissed. Stealing your own sister's husband? How can she even hold her head high in public? Another voice jeered. The sister tried to speak, to defend herself. You don't understand, she stammered. But the voices drowned her out. She was no longer the woman who had won a man. She was the betrayer, the thief of her own blood. Her ex-husband turned to her desperately. Say something. Tell them this isn't true. His voice cracked, trembling with panic, but she stepped back. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. She realized that standing beside him now meant standing against everyone else. The world wasn't applauding them. It was spitting on them. The wife, calm as ever, stood like a mountain before them. She didn't need to raise her voice. The crowd had already chosen its side. Her child clung to her hand, his innocent gaze watching the scene unfold. She looked down at him and whispered softly, "Remember this, my son. Truth always wins." The ex-husband staggered forward, trying to reach out. Please, and let me explain. I didn't know. I didn't realize. But the crowd shouted him down. Don't beg now. You knew what you were doing when you left her. You don't deserve her forgiveness. Each voice was another nail sealing his coffin of pride. Her sister broke at last. I thought he loved me more, she cried, her voice cracking. I thought I was better than her. But now, she looked at the boy and couldn't finish the sentence. The wife finally turned her gaze to them, her calm, piercing eyes cutting through the noise. You both thought you had won. You both believed betrayal makes you stronger. But tell me, what do you see now? A happy marriage? Or two broken souls standing in front of the world with nothing but shame? Her words struck like thunder. The crowd roared in agreement. Her ex-husband fell silent. His sister-wife lowered her head, unable to meet her sister's eyes. For years, the betrayed woman had been the subject of whispers, gossip, pity. But now, she stood taller than ever, vindicated by the very public that once doubted her, and the judgment was final. The crowd turned its back on the ex-husband and his wife, their disgust clear. People shook their heads as they walked away, muttering curses under their breath, but they didn't turn their backs on her. They looked at her with respect, admiration, as if she wasn't just a woman, but a symbol of strength, of survival, of truth. In that moment, justice wasn't handed down by a court. It was handed down by the people, and the verdict was clear. They were guilty. She had won. The street was no longer just a street. It had turned into a courtroom, and the judgment had already been passed. The crowd dispersed slowly, leaving behind echoes of their harsh words. But the weight of their verdict lingered like a shadow over the ex-husband and the sister. They stood frozen, stripped of every ounce of arrogance they once carried. Meanwhile, she stood tall. Her hand still held her child's, her head lifted high. No tears, no bitterness, only strength carved into every line of her face. Her ex-husband finally broke the silence, his voice trembling. Please, give me a chance to explain. I made mistakes. I was blinded. But now I see. His eyes darted to the boy. He's my son, my blood. Let me at least be part of his life. The wife's lips curved slightly, but it wasn't a smile. It was the kind of expression that carried both pity and power. Now you see? She said quietly. You only see when the world is against you. You didn't see when I begged you to stay. You didn't see when you threw me away from my sister. You didn't see when I walked alone carrying your child in my arms. And now you want to see? The words sliced him deeper than any sword. Her sister stepped forward too, her face wet with tears. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was chosen, that he loved me more. I thought I had won, but now I realize I stole everything from you. And in the end, I have nothing. The wife looked at her sister for a long, quiet moment. You didn't just steal a husband, she said softly. You stole trust. You stole family. And those things, once broken, can never be returned. The sister's knees weakened and she lowered her head in shame. The ex-husband tried one last time. Please, if not for me, then for him, he pleaded, pointing at the child. He deserves to know his father. The wife's calm eyes rested on him. She bent down, whispering in her son's ear, and the boy nodded. Then she straightened, her voice carrying the weight of finality. He will know his father, she said. He will know the kind of man who abandons his wife for her sister. He will know the kind of man who called his mother nothing. He will know the truth. But he will never, ever call you father. Gasps filled the air again. The final blow had been delivered. The ex-husband staggered back, his pride shattered, his eyes burning with regret he could never erase. His sister-wife broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. The once proud couple now stood as nothing more than symbols of betrayal and shame. The wife turned away. She didn't need to stay any longer. Justice had already been served. Not in a courtroom, not through revenge, but through truth. She held her child's hand firmly and began walking, her step steady, her head high. The crowd parted for her, watching with respect. Some even clapped softly, not for the humiliation of the villains, but for the strength of a woman who refused to break. As she walked away, she whispered the final line, not to them, but to her son, and to every soul who had witnessed her journey. Never judge someone by how weak they look in their worst moment, because one day, that same person might stand taller than anyone you've ever known. The boy smiled faintly, not fully understanding, but holding on to her words. Behind them, the ex-husband and sister stood in ruins, their power gone, their pride crushed. Ahead of them, the wife and her son walked toward a future built not on betrayal, but on strength, dignity, and truth. And with that, the story closed its final chapter.